Hello, everyone. My name is Jess Bertolini, and I am the Director of Web and Digital Engagement here at Visit Sarasota County. We are going to be doing a Q1 recap from Zartico, which is one of our research platforms that we use here at Visit Sarasota. So let's jump right in. First, I want to share where our data comes from with Zartico. This is geolocation data that is pulled from visitors' cell phones as well as credit card spend data. So this is a sample size of data that we get. It is not counting visitors walking through the door or every transaction that's spent, but it's giving us trends and sample sizes of that data for us to make marketing decisions on. So if we look at last quarter, we can see that 68% of our visitors were from out of state. That is 7% more than the same time last year. And when we look at the spend, that is 23% came from visitors compared to 19% the previous year. And then our spend at local businesses and our daily average spend are just slightly below last year at 28% and $69 average daily spend. Now, if we look at where the visitors are spending their time and money, once again, we're pulling this from geolocation data here and spending data over here. So if we look at geolocation data, let's just call out food and beverage. We can see that this year we were down about 4% compared to the same time last year of actual movement of visitors into food and beverage. However, if we look at spend, we can see we're actually up 6% in the food and beverage spend category. So that tells us that visitors are spending more than what they did last year, just based on those two details. And then if we looked at which visitor markets have the highest share of visitors visitation and spending, we can see most of our top markets for Q1 are our drive markets, looking at Tampa, Orlando, Miami, Fort Myers. New York was still a top market. However, if we look at which markets are spending the most in Q1, we pull in a few more fly markets. We see Boston and Chicago coming in, as well as New York still there for our top spend markets. And then we can see which of all of our top markets, which are more than likely to stay at accommodations. We're seeing, New York, Washington, D.C. is pulling up there, and then some of our drive markets as well. The other data that we can pull in is some of our demographics. These reflect all of the calendar year and not specific quarters. So we can see that 35% of our visitors have that household income of 151,000, with another 23% coming from over that $100,000 range. We have visitor spending by age. 25% of our visitors are 65 plus. And then looking at visitors who have children in the household, 35% of those visitors from that credit card spend data have children. And then we want to also take a quick look at our local visitor lens. So a local visitor is defined by someone who came from within 50 miles of Sarasota County, but doesn't necessarily reside in Sarasota County. Whereas our visitors are people who are more than 50 miles from our destination. So we can see, these local visitors in some of our data. So who is spending in our destination? So 65% of the spend comes from residents. That 23% that I had stated earlier coming from our visitors, but then we're grabbing another 12% from our local visitors. And once again, those are people who are within 50 miles from Sarasota County, but do not reside here. Then if we drill down to some of key categories within that, we can see, of course, 86% of the visitor spend at accommodations, or spend is coming from visitors at accommodations, another 9% from residents, and 5% from local visitors. Restaurants, 50% are from residents, but then we're grabbing another 34% of restaurant spend from visitors and 16% from local visitors. And then lastly, at retail, 58% of retail spend is coming from residents, with 24% from visitors and 18% from local visitors. And then if we look at just quickly where those local visitors are coming from, we can see that 61% are just across here at Manatee County. We're grabbing another 19% from Charlotte County. And then we can see, Hillsborough County, Pinellas, Lee County, DeSoto, if they are reaching within that 50-mile radius. And then looking at the demographic differences between our visitors and local visitors, we can see demographically by age, they're all pretty similar. Our visitors tend to have a higher household income than our local visitors, but they're very close to each other there. And then once again, I just wanted to point out kind of our sample sizes that we're looking at when we're looking at how many visitors or local visitors or residents are coming through. These are the sample sizes of devices that we are pulling from. So once again, these are Q1, just quick insights from our Zartico data platform. If you go to visit SarasotaCountyTransparency.com, you'll see more of our Zartico reports from Q1 on there if you want to dive in a little bit deeper. Thank you.